Apple has had two separate launch events in under a month to show us their new tech products. This includes a new smart speaker, smartwatch, iPads, and of course iPhones. All of those new devices play into a connected lifestyle unlike anything you had access to just 5 years ago. But the question I still have is whether or not Apple is actually even in the smart home game. When I look at what Apple has given us recently, there's a lot I like. And when I look at my own life, well, just a year ago, I was carrying an iPhone. There was numerous iPads in my home, and I had a HomePod, although now I've lent that out to a member of my team. But I was someone who was pretty heavily embedded into the Apple ecosystem not that long ago. To me, the Apple Watch is really one of the only choices in the market, even if that whole category is a bit off-putting to me in general, because really, do I want to know when my heart skips a beat when Scarlett Johansson walks by? And being the computer engineering type that I am, I love the sophistication and I love the level of engineering that goes into their phone and tablet products. I mean, when you take a real look at it, their level of expertise that's put into those devices are ahead of everyone else in the industry, except Samsung in a few places. But in terms of ecosystem integration, they're clearly at the forefront. Now, one of the funny things about doing what I do for a living is that you end up comparing all of the major systems to each other, and you tend to find some pretty similar things. So when I compare Apple and Amazon and Google and Samsung all together, what I find in general is that each company does some things remarkably well, and then they do some other things kind of okay, and then there's a few things that they've just basically ignored, or they've done such a terrible thing. I mean, why don't we talk about Bixby for a second? Or we can ask Google how their drop-in feature is coming, and you know what, if we want to get down and dirty, we can ask Amazon how that smart display interface is, or if Apple's ever coming out with one. But that lack of an actual smart display interface aside, one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing right now with Apple HomeKit is that they are not providing their own products. They're not driving the bus and putting their whole stamp on the ecosystem. Right now, they're entirely reliant on other companies to come in and produce products for their system. So I'd say they're waiting for what I call the iOS App Store phenomenon, which is just other people will do the work for them. Other companies will come in and make those products. And it's not that they've been entirely unsuccessful at that. They've managed to get a number of companies to come and build products for HomeKit. But when you look at the depth and the incredible design that they are capable of and that their teams are capable of, you know in the back of your head that if they wanted to, they could bring an incredible design to a number of smart home products. And again, sit back and take a look at this. Google has Nest, and they're producing still products. They even produced a thermostat last week. Amazon has Ring and Blink, and I'm pretty sure they own every other company under the sun. And Samsung has their own SmartThings platform, but there's nothing comparable in Apple. This week, we got the new HomePod Mini at a price equal to the Nest Audio and the Amazon Echo devices. So we should see a really good comparable there, especially with the new intercom feature that they're offering and that stereo speaker design. But honestly, the HomePod Mini is like 3 years late. And what do you think was the big holdup here? Do you think it was the plastic 360-degree sound diffuser at the bottom? Do you think that held back those incredible engineering teams at Apple? So when I asked earlier in the video whether or not Apple was even in the smart home game, what I'm asking is, are they even trying? And don't worry, I'm going to answer that for you right now. Now, I know you guys understand LiDAR technology because y'all have those smart vacuums, and it seems like lots of you have the more expensive versions with LiDAR on them. And if you look at the companies like Roomba who have had this LiDAR technology in your home, what they've talked about is being able to map your home, understanding what's in your home, and then being able to help you in other ways, because then they'll have access to the data. Well, Apple just stuck that on the iPhone 12, and they had to get it down to a small form factor to put it on the back of that. And I've already seen other designs of other devices that will end up in your home if you're buying into the Apple ecosystem that will have LiDAR on it. So that is a very important technology that will allow them to map your home, understand what's in your home, and with cameras on things like iPhones and iPads, really be able to help you and add some additional brains to Siri. Every time I watch one of these things, I hear Apple say, well, our new chip is 50% faster than last year, and so your new iPhone is 50% faster. Well, that's a pretty big jump every year to be saying. And I remember when Intel used to do that. But what happened was Intel wasn't doing that anymore. And I think Apple wanted to take this over for a number of reasons. And so they started producing their own chips. And that's why you hear this A14 Bionic chip when they come out and lay out the new iPhone 12 and how it's 50% faster than the last one. Well, they keep improving these chips in-house for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's to allow you to have a faster iPhone than any other smartphone on the market. And number two, it is to develop their knowledge in chips and to be able to apply that technology to the other devices. And they're now at a point, I would say, where they can go back a couple of versions on their chips and start to put those into smart home products. And we even saw some of the new chips or newer chips from Apple end up in the HomePod Mini. And speaking of that HomePod Mini, well, when you go and read the specifications on this new one, you find out that Apple is still waiting for something that they're working on behind the scenes. See, I've talked to you guys a number of times about the chip specification, and before that I was talking to you about Thread and how that was one of the most important protocols in the industry. Well, guess what's on the HomePod Mini? Thread. And it doesn't mean that suddenly Thread is going to show up on that HomePod device, but the first specification for that new chip standard, the standard that will rule them all in the smart home space, is going to be based on Thread, Bluetooth, which is also on the HomePod Mini, and Wi-Fi, which is also on that HomePod Mini. Holy smokes, Apple is ready for chip and the first specification, and they're ready to start bringing in more and more products. And what they also did on that front was they removed the hardware requirement. There was actually a physical hardware requirement for products to be integrated into Apple HomeKit just a few years ago, but they removed that. So now it's a software basis, and they're going to have a specification that the rest of the industry can play within and create products for that work with their system as well as other systems on the market. So what Apple is really doing behind the scenes with the HomePod Mini is preparing to accept a ton more devices in. Now, they are actually working on their first IoT device, and that is the AirTags. And I think the implementation of that device is going to be very, very different than most people are expecting. I think Apple knows that if they just go out and create a tile type of device, then they're not going to have anything that's really that much better than what already exists on the market and sort of sells okay. So I think that they will be using some of that LiDAR technology, and or they will be using the Thread technology or the chip specification in those AirTags. And so I think the delay behind that was the ability to use some of those technologies. But you think about some of their other improvements, and all of this has been relatively slow, but these little components are important and kind of the foreground of what Apple needs in order to have a smart home platform ready to go. You think about HomeKit secure video. That allows you to bring in some cameras, and it hasn't meant that they've brought in a ton, but it's given some more options to the HomeKit platform. And then you think about the HomeKit enabled routers and what that allows you to manage in terms of your IoT devices. And they even managed to get Amazon's Eero on board with that in terms of a privacy-centric router. So what we actually have going on is Apple putting together the pieces of their eventual plan to jump in both feet into the smart home market. Now, whether that means they're going to bring a bunch of products, I don't know, but they are preparing at the very least to create that iOS App Store phenomenon, and they're putting that basis together ever so slightly, little by little. The controversial piece of all of this is that Siri is still the basis of it, and you have to look seriously at the different voice assistants in order to decide for your household which one actually makes sense to be kind of your primary voice assistant. And that's why I produced the guide that is up on screen to help you walk through the entire process of that and come to a final decision for you and your family. So go check that video out. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching, and of course, don't hate, automate.